Okay, let's talk about bark. Yeah, bark. Exciting. Okay, gymnosperm and woody dicots. And woody angiosperm, perennial. So basically trees. Christmas trees, regular trees. We're talking about trees. We're talking about things that have bark. So they form a shoot meristym. They have a primary xylem and phloem that continue to move tissue, and then they have just dead tissue that's not really performing these xylem and phloem tasks anymore. It's just wood for protection. So essentially it looks like this. All of this is considered wood, and the outside is considered bark. This should not be new information for you. The outside of a tree is called bark. Of the bark, you have a cork layer, which basically is just non-functioning phloem that protects the tree. It's just dead straws on the outside protecting the tree. The cork cambium right here protects the layer. It's like a second layer of protection. And then this, also part of the bark, is actually live phloem. So the phloem on trees is going to be the closest to the outside. It's not going to be right in the middle. It's going to be the closest to the outside. So that's why the phloem can be easily contaminated by a woodpecker or an insect boring in there, or you hammering a nail into it. Its phloem is right here. On the other side of the phloem is the newest xylem, which is also new phloem, and it's increasing the wood of the stem. So this is just what's going to increase the width. And then you have active xylem that transports water. So all of this is going to be your active xylem. And then the inside is going to be heartwood. Basically, it's old non-functioning xylem that supports the tree. So heartwood is the non-functioning xylem. The sapwood is active xylem. The vascular cambium is new xylem and phloem, which increases the width every year. And then this will die back and be this until this. It kind of moves inward. And your phloem is actively transporting and photosynthesis from the outside, almost close to the bark, and the bark is there to protect it. Okay. Secondary tissue, xylem and phloem, form the vascular cambium. As the stem grows, it gets bigger. This creates tree rings. This is how you can count them, and you can also see how the weather was during that time, because you can see how much it has grown. So you've got, again, the cork, the bark, the cork cambium right here, all that's for protection. Then you have your xylem, your active phloem, your vascular cambium, which is going to have your xylem in it that's moving things up and down the tree. And then you've got your just older growth here in the center. There's again, xylem becomes the early and late wood, forming annual rings in the stem. Growth in width each year is the xylem rings. So that growth is the xylem. Here is a really lovely microscope slide of this. So here is your active xylem, and here's your crushed xylem that is just, as this grows, it pushes the crushed phloem. Phloem is crushed each year. It remains a relatively thin, protected by bark. Removing the bark removes the phloem, and it weakens the tree, or the tree dies. That's why you really don't want to pick the bark off for no reason. Again, here's the cork develops from the cork cambium outside the phloem. The cork cells are resistant to water or loss. In some plants, like cork oak, the coat can be very thick and harvested without harming the phloem. So if you have a cork oak, you can actually harvest that every 2 or 3 years. You can take the cork layer off and it will just grow back. Stems. Let's talk about stems. The vascular system again, you've got bundles of phloem and xylem. The xylem and phloem remain separate. You've got rings of vascular bundles. So here again is your phloem, your xylem, your pith in the middle here. Here's again what it looks like in monocots versus dicots. Your monocots have vascular bundles scattered throughout the stem, and there's no continuous lateral movement because your grass plant doesn't really get that much thicker. It just kind of gets taller, and that's what it does. Again, there's no secondary lateral growth. It is just a blade of grass. Stems, other than just your garden variety stems. We've got interesting things happening on the stems. You can have a rhizome. So there's a rhizome that actually creates a stem. This is also really good for propagation. You've got stolons and tubers. You've got a tuber here that will just grow. If you let your potato set out long enough, it too will grow a stolon. And every eye on your little plant is actually a node, so every eye will grow its own stolon if you'd like to just let a potato rot in your room for the rest of the year. Sometimes you have stem tendrils. These are usually vines that create like an extra stem for anchoring up against something. That's usually a viney. It's called a stem tendril. You have a runner. This would be like a strawberry or a plant that eventually will just root right here. Again, these are super great for propagation because they will just produce a root right there. You have bulbs. You have other kinds of corms that will produce roots, all super great for propagation. Again, rhizomes, stolons, corms, bulbs, tubers. The leaves are closely associated with stem development, initiated by your friend and mine, the apical meristem. Yay, apical meristem. That's very exciting. There's all kinds of different leaves. This is mostly how we identify plants. Does it have parallel veins? Does it have veins like this? Is it alternate or opposite? All kinds of interesting things are there with the leaves, and they're adapted to environments and the amount of sun they get, and leaves are the best part of plants, really. Dicots have a great variation in the shape of their leaves, and their veins are arranged in patterns. Veins in both monocots and dicots contain phloem and xylem in the leaves. Palisade cells. These are basically right below the epidermis, and that is what helps with photosynthesis. The spongy mesophyll also photosynthesize, and the intercellular space between the spongy mesophyll cells help move water, CO2, and O2 throughout the plant. The epidermis, again, contains stomates. These are usually on the bottom of the leaf, not on the top. They are the pore, the mouth. They're surrounded by guard cells. They open and close the stomate. It's the regular passage of water and gas into and out of the leaf. They can be sunken into the epidermis to reduce water loss, and they may have a waxy layer, but that is the stomate. Modifications of leaves. Tendril climbers, so that can be on the stem or the leaf. Twiners, so these are, again, leaves that actually look like this. Fiddleheads on ferns, and, again, vines, things that need to grab. And thorny thorns that are actually leaves. No, thank you. My things have thorns on them. The parts of the leaf. So you have the blade. The blade is basically this whole thing. The what you call the leaf, it's actually called the blade. The petiole is this little thing from where it's attached to the leaf. There's actually a little space there. It's not the leaf stem. It's called a petiole. It's a stem-like part that attaches the leaf to the stem. If there's no petiole, it's a sessile leaf attachment, and it's a characteristic that will help you identify the plant. The stipule is this place right at the base of the petiole. Not everything has a stipule, but most plants do have something that connects. Again, this is the direct connection that connects the petiole to the stem. That is called a stipule. Okay, we have simple and compound. A simple leaf is just a one leaf. A compound leaf has 3 or more leaflets. So this is the whole leaf, and it's called a compound leaf. It's distinguished by the presence or absence of a bud at the base. So here's the bud, and it produces a petiole with a compound leaf. Compound leaves have no bud at the base of a petiole. It's attached to the leaflet. And there are all kinds of different, look at all the kinds of leaves. This is what we use to identify plants. You've got all the types of leaves. You've got how they are attached, alternate or opposite. You've got how the leaf looks. You've got palmate or triplate. You've got all kinds of fascinating things. Okay, we'll start with bud.